everyone, it's Ginger from StampingTheCape.com, and I keep forgetting to say I'm a Stampin' Up! Independent demonstrator, and I'm here with project number 3 of my March monthly stamp club. If you'd like to join my virtual stamp club, all you have to do is place an order of $35 or more using this hostess code by March 28th, and I'll send you the packets to make all 3 of my stamp club projects. If you happen to place a $150 order, you earn your own hostess rewards or host rewards, and I'll still send you the packets, but don't use my hostess code so you don't lose out on my host code. Anyway, this is the 3rd project, and I'm using the Gingham Gala Designer Series paper, which is now currently available from the Occasions catalog, but you may want to order it sooner than later because there's a limited supply of this. It was extremely popular. Besides 2 of our punches, one of the most popular items we've had in a very long time. So once this supply depleted, there may not be enough time to get more in. The Occasions catalog does run till the end of May, so fingers crossed they could get another order in, but just in case, you might want to get it sooner than later. And also, I had mentioned in my other videos, I'm using the Best Bunny stamp set bundle, which is this stamp set and the coordinating punch. And I saw online this morning that these are starting to get low in quantity. So if you wanted to get this for Easter, you might want to do that as well, sooner than later. And as far as measurements and everything for all my projects, there'll be a free PDF download on my blog for these projects with the supplies and all the measurements, so you don't have to write anything down at this point. So let me get started. I'm using the small bunny this time in the stamp set. He's just a little self-contained little guy, and I'm going to stamp him 3 times and color him in, and I'm going to be cutting them out with the smallest oval from the Layering Oval framelits. So I'm going to have to make sure I get him in a good position there. And actually, just to be sure, I didn't give myself a whole lot of paper. I might just give me a little light pencil line that I can erase afterwards, just so I know where I'm cutting here. We'll do one over here, just so I have a target as to where he needs to be stamped, or she, or it. Be gender neutral here. Let's see. Okay, so now I have an idea of where I'm going to stamp those, and I'm going to be using Stampin' Blends, so I'm going to stamp in my Memento ink. That's what you use with your Stampin' Blends. It doesn't make the ink bleed, or the black bleed. You have to be careful with what type of ink you use with your blends, and the Memento is the recommended one. One more. And then we're going to be coloring these guys in with pastels. Very springy, very summery. Not what it's like today, but weather-wise, but it'll arrive eventually. So I'm going to do one bunny in Daffodil Delight. I'm using both the light and dark marker. I'm going to start with the Daffodil Light blend and just quickly color in the bunny. And I'll go back and do some highlighting afterwards. We'll just color everything. And you don't want to, for some reason, the light colors tend to, even though we're using Memento, if it's not really dry yet, it tends to make them bleed a little bit. So don't go over it too many times at first. And then I'm keeping his bunny tail white, but that's your preference. And I'm keeping the inside of his ears white because we're going to fill those in with pink. But now I'm going to go around and just kind of add some detail to his cheeks, maybe the top of his head a little bit, one side of his ear, just to add a little more dark. And we'll go back in on those too, and the top of his little paws so they stand out. And down here across the bottom, just around his belly, his knees, just to accent those areas a little bit. Then I'll go back in with the light and deepen that. When you color with Stampin' Blends, particularly the darker colors, but it still happens with the lighters, if you color over the same area over and over, you tend to get a darker color anyway. It's not as dark as the dark. So I usually go really lightly the first time over with my light color, and then I can go back in and add more color in. And oh, if you notice too, I'm kind of leaving his muzzle area lighter, just white in fact. And I'm going to go in with my black Stampin' Right marker with the fine tip and just touch the center of his nose to make it a little blacker so it stands out. And then I'm going to use the light Flirty Flamingo to do his little ear centers. Just give him some pink in there. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing with the next bunny. This time I'm using the light petal pink for him for a quick wash over of color. And you can barely see it until we start adding the darker color in there, but it will become noticeable. This is a good color if you have images with faces and whatnot. We used to have one called a Stampin' Right marker called Blush Blossom, which was a great skin tone, but that got discontinued. And so this also gives a little bit of color. But then, like I said, I'm going to go in with the dark petal pink and add a little more color, and it'll show up a little better. This bunny, this would be cute for baby cards or invitations or things like that. But these pastels are really sweet. Okay. Let me go back in and bring more of that color in to the rest of his body, blending that in a little bit darker. And when you go over the darker color with the lighter color, that's how you get that blending effect. It will lighten, the lighter color will lighten up the dark and kind of bring it down in tone. And then you get that gradual blending of color. And again, I'm going to do his nose. Just a little tap on his nose. And then the light Flirty Flamingo for his ears. Bring in more color there. Okay. And our last bunny is done with the Highland Heather. I'm going to start with the light again, just as I did with the other two. Come in real quick. Color them in real quick. And again, I'm not worried about leaving some of the white space there, but go over everything except his tail. And then we'll come in with the dark and highlight again on the ear, the cheeks, a little bit of his head, right up to his arms, knees, and across the bottom. Across his belly a little bit. And then we'll go back in with the light and finish it off. That. You can see, especially on these darker colors, you can see how when I go over it, how it changes the color anyway. So you end up with the darker, a little bit darker of the light. And his nose. Now, I thought for sure when I did this I was going to screw up that nose at least one time, but I did pretty good. I didn't go outside the line. And the light Flirty Flamingo for his ears. Her ears. Its ears. Somebody's ears. Okay. So let me get these out of the way, make some room. All right, so I'm going to cut these out with the, as I said, the smallest oval framelit from the Layering Framelits dies. So let me bring my Big Shot over. get that done. You just have to run it through 3 times, unfortunately, since I only have the one set, so hang in there with me. Of course, now what did I do with the oval? I think I just buried it here, didn't I? Yep. All right. I can just follow those lines that I put in there to line it up. And this, I'm not using the my magnetic plate. I think it's downstairs with my stamping group meets. I'm using, this is the plate that comes with the new Big Shots. It has the Thinlit die adapter, and then you can take this piece off for embossing, which we're going to do again, another embossing with the embossing mats that I did, similar to what I did in an earlier video, or the second project video. I said the embossing mats that we're going to be using, I haven't played around with them with the old platforms that came with the original Big Shots, but I'm sure you can work out what the sandwich would be for that. My guess would be to remove all the tabs on that old platform that has the flaps, just flip them all out of the way, and use the embossing mat and its plate when you do it. But maybe I'll have to try it out to see. All right, so there's our 3 bunnies. And while I have the Big Shot here, I'm going to be doing that technique as I did before with the using the rectangle stitch framelits. This time I'm using the largest of the rectangles, and we're going to create the stitches around the perimeter of the front of our card. I don't know if you saw that, but rather than die cutting it out, it's going to stitch it, and so it does show through on the other side, but it gives it a nice design. So we're going to do that. So what you need to do is, if you're using, as I said, I'm using the new Big Shot platform that comes with Big Shot today. I'm removing the die cut platform. We're going to use one embossing plate, one cutting pad, I'm sorry, and then the sandwich goes as follows. You use the die face up, and I'm using an 8.5 by 5.5 piece of thick Whisper White. I think this works better with thicker cardstock, so our color cardstock and the thick Whisper White are very vanilla. And I think I'm going to fold this in half just so I really know where that center score line is of my card. And in order to really get this centered, since you have to do this face up in the machine, I'm going to tape this to my card front. I'm using removable tape. I've heard people use washi tape, but I don't have great luck with washi. Sometimes it has torn my paper, so I'm a little skeptical about using it. But this removable tape works great, and will allow me to keep my die in position. And again, you're doing the die face up, putting your cardstock down. Then you're going to put your blue, for this case, there's 2 embossing pads, and this is the thinner one. So I'm putting the blue embossing pad over it. And then you're going to use the plate that comes with the embossing kit. So that's going to go over next. And then we're going to run it through and watch the magic happen. If I did it right anyway. Which one never knows when I'm doing videos. I get all flustered and confused and whatnot, but I think I'm going to be okay. So yeah, there we go. So now hopefully you can see that. We've got that little stitched embossing. Now you get the double stitches right across the front of your card. So if you didn't want to do a layer with stitched, another stitched piece or whatever, it saves you a little bit of cardstock too. And you still get that lovely stitched effect on the front of your card. So I think now all we have to do is some assembling and a little bit of stamping. So let's see. So, oh yes, we're going to stamp our grass. And this will take a little bit of time, so I'm just going to tell you what I did and I'll fast forward it. I'm using both the Call Me Clover and Granny Apple Green. And so what I've done is I've gone in with the Call Me Clover and I've just started stamping rows. I'd stamp one with full ink and then I'd stamp again without re-inking. Then I'd ink it up and I'd full ink, stamp off, ink off, stamp off, and I'd alternate going down. Then once I get about 5 rows done, I'm going to come in with the Granny Apple Green and stamp over the stamped off areas that I did with the Call Me Clover, just to add some different coloring in there. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to do that, but that's what I'm going to do. So as I said, you'll see what I'm doing, and I'm just going to fast forward it so you don't have to sit through, 20 minutes of stamping or something. All right, so there we go. So it's, nothing really fancy or whatever. It's going to get covered up a lot by the eggs, but I just wanted to have a little bit of green background. So now I've got the 5 eggs. Of course, everything's falling on the floor. The 5 eggs that I've already die cut from that same oval that I did the bunny rabbits. And I'm just going to layer those across the center. Sort of in an overlapped kind of effect. And I like the small check, but if you prefer the larger check, you could use that. And they're just going to get snailed across the center. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, let's see, 2 in the middle. Let's see, I did these 2 first to start with. Start my center. And let's see, I'm going to make room for the 4 legs, so we're going to do that one. Then we'll do a green one. And then we'll set the other ones in between those. We'll put the other one here. There. Purple one. This one. And one more. Okay. It's funny, I've always been surprised that, I guess because it's such a novelty, but Stampin' Up, to my knowledge, or since I've been a demonstrator, which has been like 8 years, they've never come out with an egg die. Every Easter I think, okay, this will be the year, and they've yet to do it. So we have to work with the ovals. But it does the trick, so just erasing those light pencil lines I made. And put our bunnies on. Oh, and the other thing I did too with the bunnies is I just added a little wink of Stella onto them. I figured give them a little shimmery pop out so they're not so flat. So I'm just going to quickly go over them. Just a little bit of wink of Stella. Just brighten them up a little bit. And if you wanted to, you could, I suppose, use some of the fine tip glue pen and maybe, well, I don't know if you could use Dazzling Details. It might cover up too much, I think. But I'm sure there's other glittery things you could do if you're a glitter girl to make it kind of pop out. And you do have to be careful sometimes with the Wink of Stella on certain colors, especially dark colors, as you're going over it. It can pick up ink sometimes. I think it's more so on the stamped ink than the alcohol inks. But you just want to be aware of that if you're doing something that's stamped and you've got reds and yellows and whatnot. You might want to just rub it off on your table. Make sure that you don't have any extra ink that you're not expecting there. And then I'm just going to put a couple of little Stampin' Dimensionals on the back and in each of these, and we'll add them to the front of our card. So this month's cards, the only big deal about this month's cards are I'm trying to show my stampers how to use the embossing mats so they can get a little more extension on their use of their dies and such. So, oh, excuse me. So little purple bunny is going to go here, and I'm bringing them down a little bit further than the eggs on the top. And yellow bunny is going to go on the left side. I'll go here. And then we'll pop this little cute guy in the front. And he's going to go even a little lower. Okay, so now all we have left to do is our sentiment. And I am this time using the full Easter blessings from the Itty Bitty Greetings stamp set. These are a double stamp bundle that I think pretty much replaces the teeny tiny wishes that we used to have that covered all the different holidays. But this has a great variety, so I'm using the Easter Blessings stamp set, but you've got sentiments for other holidays and other occasions, so it's like a coverall of everything. And I'm going to stamp my sentiment in Highland Heather. And I'm just going to stamp that right in the middle. And we're going to use the Classic Label Punch, I believe this is called, and punch that out. And then I've got a piece of Highland Heather. This is, I believe, 1/2 inch by 2.5 inches, and I'm going to attach that, and then I'm just going to trim it with the scissors, just to cut it down so that we get a little bit of a layer on there. So I'm just going to try to get that evenly spaced, and then I'm just going to take my scissors and trim it. And if you just short enough, you just make one quick snip. You should be able to get it straight across. And then again, I'll put dimensionals on the back of that. And we'll just attach that to the front. So that's a pretty quick and easy card, kind of cute. You get a little bit of coloring, you get a little bit of Designer Series paper. So it gives you a little bit of everything. So there we go. So those are my 3 projects for this month. And again, if you'd like to get the supplies for these, if you place an order of $35 or more by March 28th using that hostess code, I'll be happy to send you the supplies. So thanks so much for watching, and bye-bye for now.